If I had a dollar for every person in their lifetime who said, I should have bought, back in 2018, I should have bought back in 2011. If I had a dollar for every person that regretted not jumping into the market when they knew it was the bottom, I wouldn't have to do mortgages anymore. One of the frustrating things about working in finances is, the emotions that come with consumer sentiment. We are a very herd-like species. And so whenever the majority thinks something, typically the majority acts on it. And we saw this a lot in COVID era, where there was limited inventory and consumers were just willing to do anything to purchase a house. And I'm talking about waiving their contingencies, waiving their appraisals, paying $100,000 over list price. I mean, people were willing to let the sellers live in their homes for free. I mean, we were talking about crazy times and people thought it was a great deal because interest rates were in the 2%. And when you really look at that, right, was that really such a good deal? And we're now in a market where interest rates are higher and there's a lot of talk about a recession, and immediately people have, past financial trauma. I grew up, as a millennial, and my dad had a, foreclosure. We filed for bankruptcy. I mean, it was a very traumatic financial time in my life. And so when I hear the word recession, naturally I feel like cringing. But recessions do not mean housing crashes. Just because there is a recession on the horizon does not mean that all of a sudden you should bail on your properties and that real estate is a terrible investment. And I really want to talk about why that is in this video. So if you are new here, my name is Lizy Hoeffer. I have worked in residential mortgage since 2002. I became a loan officer in 2008 during the Great Recession, and I have seen a lot of housing cycles. I have seen since before the boom, then the Great Recession. I saw the recovery. I saw the slowdown in 2018, the craziness of COVID, and whatever we're going to call this, right? So I can tell you that there are principles in investing that stand true to the test of time, even in environments that seem economically unstable. So if you like what I have to say in this video, I hope you will like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And please send this on to a friend if you find it valuable. All right, so to start this video out, I want to talk about market price because it is probably, I would say, one of the most important principles when it comes to investing, and investing not just in real estate, but literally any type of investment and honestly any kind of purchase. And market price, guys, just simply put, is what is somebody willing to pay to have your investment or to have the item today. And in the COVID craziness, it is not an exaggeration to say that people were willing to pay 110 to 120% of list price, which was way over what the value of the property is worth. And the reason I bring that up is because there are a lot of headlines right now talking about housing correction and housing values declining. And what they're really talking about is housing prices. So, what a house would be listed at versus what it actually sells at. And there's a big debate on whether or not the value is actually declining or if we are just getting back to what the housing value should have been in the first place. And so just to kind of explain that further, housing prices actually rose more than 40% in this COVID craziness because people were willing to pay over appraised value, over list price, and there was, like, honestly, guys, I had some cases where there was one property and 60 people bidding on it. So bidding wars drove up, what people were willing to pay. And so it's an important concept to understand because market price swings both ways. So when we had very limited inventory and a ton of buyer demand, we saw that people were willing to pay way over value for a property. Now, in today's climate with higher interest rates, we still have limited inventory, but significantly lower buyer demand. We are seeing that sellers are willing to lower their prices. They're willing to help pay for closing costs. They're willing to pay for buy down costs. They're paying agent bonuses. I mean, we are seeing market price swing in the opposite direction. And in my experience, this is probably one of the most favorable buyer eras, right? Especially for first-time home buyers who are notoriously beat out by move-up buyers, cash buyers, investors. And so if you are a first-time home buyer, I want you to recognize that there is real advantage right now in market price and not so much in interest rate. All right, so the reason I don't think that there is any reason to freak out about your home maybe not being worth, what you paid for it, 6 months from now or a year from now, is because the average length that a first-time home buyer lives in their property is now 18 years. And if you look at historical appreciation charts, when you buy a property and keep it for 20 years, guys, it doubles in value. And depending on your area, like most of the metropolitan Phoenix area in the last 10 years has seen it double, shorter than 10 years. And so it's really hard to predict timing the market. It's really hard to, get at the bottom. And typically when you're getting the bottom in price, you're paying a different penalty. Like for example, cheapest interest rates came at a penalty in terms of price. Now we're seeing, prices go lower and we're seeing a penalty in interest rate. And so there's going to be a cost to you no matter what market you decide to purchase in. But if you hold on to your investment for a long period of time and you purchase it at, a budget that you feel comfortable with, I haven't seen anyone lose historically, and that's including, guys, literally the worst value drop in history with the Great Recession. So to give you an example of this, I actually bought a condo, a townhome, for $168,000 in 2006. I ended up selling that property several years ago at a loss. But if I had kept that property, I actually saw that it sold for $348,000 last year. Yes, $348,000. And guys, at one point in time, that condo, that townhome was worth $33,000 in my ownership. So it just says, I just want you to know that real estate is a long-term investment, as are most things, right? When it comes to investing. All right, so now that we've talked about market price, I want to talk about value and how do you know if you're paying an appropriate value, right? An appropriate price for your house. And guys, that is going to be based on a standard sales cycle. So nothing right now. So right now is not a standard sales cycle. And what happened in COVID, also not a standard sales cycle. So you're going to want to talk to your real estate agent about when the last time they saw a balanced market. And a balanced market, guys, is the number of sellers that are listing their homes to the number of, qualified buyer demand, right? That they're pretty much even. And you want to see, based on your price point and the type of home in the area, what was the average sales cycle and the average appreciation from that time period. And so typically in real estate, that's going to be anywhere between 3 months to 12 months, depending on your price point. And again, like I said, the location and the type of property. So like, for example, luxury properties typically take longer to sell. Condos sometimes can take longer to sell. Manufactured homes can take longer to sell. It just really honestly depends on your market area. And so when you look at that, right, then you'll want to base average appreciation. So how long ago was that? Was it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years ago from the last time you saw a balanced market? And what does that appreciation number look like? So if it was 5 years and the average appreciation was 3% at that time, you should see about 15% growth from the price back then, right? So if that was 5 years ago, 2017, so 15% growth from a purchase price back in 2017. And so you'll talk to a real estate agent about that, but that's how you're going to get a good gauge on value. Now, what something appraises at, though, is also based on a historic value, typically anywhere between 3 and 6 months. So just know that if you are buying still in 2022, right, you are still seeing historic prices based on what people were willing to pay market price back at the very beginning of the year. So I would not freak out about this. There's lots of reasons why I still would purchase. And mainly that has to do with actual cash outlay and just understanding the length of time you plan on being in the home.